basically the notion of Schadenfreude. I remember the first time it's a German word which literally means joy from the suffering of others.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I think so.
That way. So it's kind of it was very interesting to me because I was like, oh, this totally makes sense. It's like when you're watching a comedy sketch of some dude slipping on a banana peel and they, hurt themselves. You just kind of laugh at them, right?
I see.
Or once again, like, have you ever been on the freeway where you were secretly speeding, but then you slow down for some reason because you're doing something, and then you see someone else on the side of the road getting pulled over?
Yes.
And then there's like, haha, sucker, like, so glad that wasn't me, right?
Totally.
So I almost feel that the news is essentially like Schadenfreude, where, like, obviously, like, we humans, we don't want to intentionally derive joy from the misfortune of others, but I think what happens is, when it does happen, there is an indirect serotonin boost that one might get from the fact that knowing that you're relatively safer than somebody else who was, taken off, if that makes sense. Like, not to bring the Holocaust into mind, but like during any world wars, right? Or I recently watched there was actually the girl in the hiding from the family, why am I forgetting it? What's the name of that girl in the family? Oh, Anne Frank.
Yeah.
So I recently watched the Anne Frank diary, right?
Yeah.
I watched the play, and essentially the whole vibes of the Anne Frank, right, is that like, obviously everyone wants to help each other, but ultimately it comes family first, right?
Yeah.
And then so if you want to make sure that your family's protected, and then you hear that another family got captured, there's a huge sigh of relief that it wasn't your family. Now you don't want to intentionally wish harm on the other families, but still psychologically or physiologically, and this is where I think the physiological aspect of fear is very interesting, because like, if you think about it, like any normal human being, we have dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and all these other hormones we probably don't even know of yet. So like, you can't even like, I don't think people could really control their emotions. I mean, we could train ourselves to feel less affected by it, but like no normal human being sees a bear staring at it in the face and cannot feel that hormonal cocktail. So also that's where I think, so I was talking about the human centipede, right?
Yeah.
So the way I treat the news, it's kind of like a shit sandwich. Can you imagine someone's like, hey, Ruben, here's a fucking shit sandwich, eat it.
Yeah.
You're like, no, I don't want to eat it. But then like, I force you to eat it. So you eat it, it's like, oh no, it tastes like shit, right?
Yeah.
But then you kind of get addicted to the shit sandwich. And then you just like, for some perverse reason, you just want to keep eating. You can't stop eating it. And then the whole time you're complaining because it's a shit sandwich, right? Yeah. It doesn't make you feel good. It smells horrible.
Is that complaining because we feel like we're supposed to? Because we've been told that you're not supposed to like a shit sandwich, or
well,
maybe it actually tastes pretty good. I don't know.
So like, if you like shit sandwiches, I think that's kind of good. But I think my theory is, in society, or no, this is more of a philosophical, psychological thing. I think, because I've always been curious, like, why do people blame others or complain? And I think actually when you complain, you're kind of committing some sort of revenge on reality. Because like, something bad happens to you, humans' natural response is, why is this bad thing happening to me? And then that's why, you think about religion and stuff, right? Is that like, maybe I did something wrong which caused this misfortune to go into our family. We go across the street. And so I think when you're complaining, you're trying to take away responsibility that somehow you're responsible for your own pain and suffering.
Okay.
And so like, let's say we, lost our job or something, we complain about it. You essentially don't want to accept the fact that sometimes reality is cruel and unpredictable, and sometimes there's no reason for suffering. And that's why I think like my personal philosophy about like reality is cruel and doesn't care for anyone's happiness or their fortunes. And it's not even necessarily anyone's fault per se, but the fact that like reality is cruel, but knowing that reality is cruel, rather than complaining about it or trying to find out a reason for our suffering, it's like, how can we just do something about it?
So if we're to accept that reality is cruel, which I think is easy to see in a time like this.
Yeah.
Does accepting that also require accepting that we can't change it, or should we then still try to change it? I feel like
Oh,
those are two different things.
so I would say then it's within the bounds of your abilities, change as much as you can.
Yeah.
But like, so for example, like both of us going on a walk, right? This is a smart idea because at least I think from a legal perspective, we're still allowed to go on walks, right? Insofar much as I understand.
I think so.
All right.
For now.
So unless we're in New York City and they literally welded the doors shut,
Okay.
you know, what we could practically do is we could walk and we could do something about that, right? So, you know, one philosophy I'm really interested in is called Stoicism.
Yeah.
The basic gist of it is within your power, what can you control, what you not control?
Yeah.
So I cannot control the fact that this COVID virus exists, but what can I control? I can control going on a walk. I can control turning off the news. I can control, you know, cooking a nice meal with Cindy, or I could control doing a bunch of push-ups at home to boost my mood, right?
Yes.
And so, you know, it was actually kind of crazy. So Cindy was talking to her mom, and she was like, "Oh, you know, how's it?" Because you know they fled the Vietnam War, and it's like, "How does this affect? This is not as bad as the war, right?" And then Cindy's mom was like, "No, this is far worse." We go this way. This is far worse because, at least in time of war, people are still kind of helping each other.
Huh.
But now the problem with COVID, essentially it's like a zombie vampire apocalypse where humans are afraid of other humans because the metaphorical enemy is this like phantom like virus, but it's communicated via humans. So then the weird thing is that there's not a clear enemy. It's like, oh, you know, the communists are the evil ones.
Huh.
It's more of like the person, even though they're friend or foe, they might be infected, and like I can't even communicate with nobody anymore besides like my really close friends and family. But even then, like even my mom was like gonna visit some friends and family, and all of them were just like stay away. And I think it's been, I think the thing that's been really painful is that in times of crisis like this, people start to show the true colors.
Huh. That's so interesting, because I feel like in some ways war does turn people against each other along geographic, cultural, or religious lines, for example.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's you know, people against every other person.
Yeah.
But so
that's why I think, Ruben, my theory about COVID, it's kind of like a hybrid of zombie apocalypse meets vampire apocalypse. Like, do you have any good zombie or vampire movies you think that this reality we're currently going through could be connected to?
let's see. Not off the top of my head.
Okay, so oh, this is kind of unrelated. Have you ever watched a movie Elysium with Matt Damon?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's good movie. I'd recommend to watch. So essentially the gist of Elysium. So actually right now my whole take on this thing is it's not even about the virus or disease. Actually what it's about class. It's a class issue right now. And then I think I think one thing I was thinking about was the Great Depression. But the difference between this and the Great Depression was if you're rich, for the most part your life wasn't affected that much. But now there was this pandemic, rich people and poor people are dying alike. So in some ways, this is like the ultimate socialist disease where it equally affects you no matter how rich or poor you are. So I'm just kind of curious too, because like you could be a billionaire, right? You could be, let's say you're a tech billionaire. You're still probably afraid the shit that you're gonna get and die, or somebody else is gonna die. So in some ways this disease is kind of the great equalizer where it makes people very uncomfortable because, and also this is just my sociological analysis, is that, you know, people still gotta eat, right? Who's the people producing the food and delivering the food via DoorDash, and who's the Uber drivers and the, you know, the Postmates, whatever? It's all like poor working class people. So